Welcome back. This is your host, Gabe Morales. Now, I guess I'll have to repeat some of the things I said on the very first video because from looking at the post, some people must have not heard my disclaimer. I'm not saying that this information is 100% accurate. I have done a lot of research, thousands of hours, but I'm tracking thousands of different guys. This is just one gang out of hundreds I've tracked across the United States. So I think I know a little bit. But like I said before, nobody knows everything, not one person. I do appreciate the positive feedback on some of these guys, and I double checked and caught a couple mistakes. So I'm not too proud to admit that I'm not perfect. I do make mistakes, but I do try very hard to get it right. Believe me, I am very much aware that CDC doesn't always get it right, but they have to have some kind of documentation for a validation packet, especially today when the criteria is even more stricter than it was ever before. As I said in the very first video also, there was no validation system until the late 1970s. So anybody I mentioned that has an A number or an early B number is only people's opinion. And as I just stated, even with some of the guys that CDC has validated, that is only their opinion, not necessarily 100% correct all the time. I don't just talk to one gang investigator. I've talked to dozens over the years, both active and retired. I also have talked to the Bureau of Prisons. So once again, you may have a guy that's not recognized in California, but he is in the feds. I kind of relate myself to being a weather reporter. I try to gather all this information from CDC, BOP, from former street cops that were on gang task forces, documented court cases, and sometimes the media, although we all know they often get it wrong. I also have a lot of feedback from former and active gang members. And with that information, I put together these videos. If you absolutely don't like what I put out, don't watch my channel. I'm okay with that. Don't post just hater stuff. Give me some credit where credit is due and some positive criticism where you feel that is necessary. That's the way to go about it. Otherwise, I hate to make it sound like a threat, but it's actually not a threat. I will block you and you'll no longer have access to my channel. We have been covering Mexican Mafia members with the last name of A, as in Alpha. We'll continue now. George Cricket Andrade was from Arta and a younger MM member, having been born in 1976. He had a T number, and I show that he was housed at Centinela at one time, as well as Avenal State Prison. He is currently housed at Pleasant Valley State Prison. But like I said, I will not speak about these guys' current status. Most of this information is old info, so I'm not giving away any major secrets here. Jose Toto Anguino was from Ontario Black Angels. He had an E number and was MA in the mid-90s. Edward Joe, a.k.a. Inch Annette, was from Compton, Barrio Tres Locos. He had an H number when he was in CDC and was made an MA member. He was indicted on the second MA RICO case and sent to the feds. Inch was involved in the 187 of Victor Marillo with Chacho Woody, which ended up kicking up a whole bunch of dust. Inch was hit in April 2007 at Coleman by multiple Sureños and an MA member on orders of the MA. He was released from federal custody a few years after that, and as far as I know, was laying low. Edward Snowball Anspouch lived in LA in the 1960s. He had an A number and was made MA at least in the late 1970s. He was released and came back on a D number, where he spent some time at Richard J. Donovan in San Diego. He had multiple probation violations, and I lost track of him after that. Pascual Big A Aparicio, I recall being from LA County with a C number, and he was another one of those MA hitmen that I had in the early 90s at New Folsom Violence Control Unit. Aparicio is now 66 years old and is housed at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Jesse Sleepy Aragon was from Arta and had a B number. I show that he was made MA in the mid-80s and was a big drug dealer. His wife was Jenny Bergueno, Will Buff's daughter, but that did not matter. He was later placed on the hit list. Louis Araujo was from El Hoyo Maravilla and is a very interesting individual. I'll probably have to do an entire episode on Louis. Louis was one of the early MA members and was the only guy I know that I believe was also undercover in West Familia. So he was first MA undercover NF and then was playing his MA card again, was very much involved in Matavia's resisting taxation in 1994, and was running a racket up in Sacramento area, according to my friend Marquez, around 2010, who before he retired was working on revalidation paperwork on Louis. He was still alive last I checked and would be almost 80 years old. Currently, Maravillas do coexist with Sureños in the LA County Jail and in California Department of Corrections, according to my sources. Fred Payaso Archuleta was from Victorville. He got hit with a C number and was validated as MA in the mid-90s after he acquired a D number. I show that he was at CIM in 2012, and I lost track of him after that. Juan Johnny Archuleta was from Rancho San Pedro. I believe he had a B number and was MA in 1974, but he came back on a J number, and I still had him down as being MA in 2004. Carlos Gabi Arciniega is from El Monte Flores and acquired an E number and validated after that, about 2004. He then spent some time at the Bay as well as Salinas Valley State Prison and is presently housed at Corcoran. Joaquin Masque Arellano, I think, might be from San Diego. I am not sure if he's related to the Ariano Felix organization, but a lot of guys down there do work for them. He got popped with a J number, and I show he was validated as MA in the mid-90s and continued to be active at Soledad in 2012. I show he is no longer in custody. Juan China Boy Arias was from Arta, which has had quite a few MN members over the year. He acquired J number 96167 and was made MA in the mid-1990s, sponsored by Smilong from Hazard. China Boy ended up being sent to Lawrence, Colorado, where he communicated quite a bit with Colorado Sureños, according to my friend and former investigative lieutenant Steve Lucero. But while he was in the feds, he was given orders to hit his cellie, a guy named Psycho Caldera, who had put on an MA tat that I understand was not authorized. But Psycho got a hold of the Huila first and killed China Boy. It's a real cutthroat world in Miami. Rudolph Huesos Arias was from San Diego. He had an E number, and I show was validated as MA in the mid-90s. He ended up going to Pelican Bay SHU, and I'm not sure of his current status. Joseph Colorado Red Arias was from Colton, and he had an A number. He was made MA by at least 1972. And he had Italian Mafia, La Cosa Nostra dope connections in the 70s and was associated with Champ Reynoso. He ended up going down to Juarez, Mexico in 75, where Hondo Lechuga had a dope connection. Colorado was involved in a robbery on some paisas with Daniel Spider Arriaga. And I understand during that robbery, Spider got killed. So Colorado got blamed for that, whether it was friendly fire on purpose or by accident. He ended up being hit in June 1991 by Chuco Castro. Colorado died in Corcoran State Prison in March 1996. Chicharista was from Old Town National City in San Diego. I show that he was validated MA at Corcoran in 2016, but is currently no longer in custody. Rudy Arizmendez was from Flats, an old barrio in LA. I don't have a lot of information on him, but I did see his name on an old card that Moco showed me, which was a roll call of MM members. Julian Spade, a.k.a. Fritos Armas, was from San Francisco and was close to Michael Acha Ison, who was a longtime MM member, was very powerful at Folsom Prison. I show Armas was MA in the mid-70s, and he didn't show up on my radar after that, so I'm not sure what happened to him. Payaso Armendariz was from Hazard. I had him at C facility around 1990. And what is interesting to me is that he had family living there in Sacramento around 47th Street, which was the first Sureño barrio that I recall in all of Northern California. Let me know if there was one you have documentation on before 1990. Another thing was very common there in the city of Folsom. There were some low-income apartments literally across the street from the prison that were known as safe houses. Think about it. Are you going to keister something all the way from San Diego or LA up to Folsom Prison, many hours away? Or would it be better to go to a safe house right outside the gate, keister it there, and then bring it into the visiting room? So when the Sureños planted their flag in Northern California, many times that was for Mexican Mafia safe houses. Rudolph Huesos Arias was from San Diego. He had an E number, and I show was validated in the mid-1990s. He ended up going to Pelican Bay SHU, and I showed he was no longer in custody after 2021. Raymond Aragon was from Chiques, and I show was an MA member, but then switched to Familia Cinco. Here's another group I'm going to have to do a video on. A lot of people got it mixed up. Familia Cinco was not the predecessor of the Nuestra Familia. I know that for a fact and can prove it. I'll have to do that in a different video and not get sidetracked. But Aragon was one of those individuals who jumped ship. They were both Mexican Mafia members and West Familia members who were not satisfied with the way those organizations ran. And they jumped ship to Familia Cinco, which eventually folded by the mid-70s. Daniel Spider Arriaga Estrada, as I mentioned earlier, was from El Hoyo Maravilla and had a B number 44415. He was involved in the murder of Benito from the Nuestra Familia, who was involved in the Shoe War in 1968 when Robot Salas attacked Hector Mad Dog Padilla at San Quentin in September 1968. I guess Robot was not satisfied with just wounding Benito because he ended up killing him with Spider on May 26, 1976. And like I said, Spider was then killed on August 17, 1990 by Colorado Arias, which was a major blunder on his part. Cesar Arteaga Huerta, I believe, was from Wilmas. I'm not 100% sure on that. You guys let me know if I forgot some of the videos these guys are from. But I'm pretty sure every one I've said so far was at least MA for a minute. I show Cesar had a J number and was MA in 1980 through at least 2004, but I lost track of him after 2012. Raymond Shark Arzate was from Orange County, Santa Ana, and had an A number. I believe he was made MA around 1970. He ended up returning to CDC for a grand theft auto in 1984, where he acquired a C number and was in and out of prison after that. Richard Toker Avenida was from Southside Kings. He had a V number, and I show was MA at Corcoran Prison in 2016, then transferred to High Desert Prison, and is currently housed at Wasco State Prison. Perry Werrell Avila was from El Habra and had a K number, spent some time at Corcoran, and was validated after that. Spent some time at Kern Valley State Prison, as well as New Folsom State Prison, and was validated after that. He was later moved to Centinela and had been involved in stabbing some staff members in April of 2008. William Billy Avila was from Rivas. He had a V number, and I show was validated as an MA member by at least 2010, but was paroled in 2011. I don't know if I said it before, but when you parole, you are usually given a directive by the carnales to hook up with other carnales within a certain time frame. It could be a couple weeks, it could be as much as a month, but usually it's relatively soon after you parole. If you don't report, you're considered to be under suspicion and may be considered no good and placed on a hit list. Another William Avila Contreras was from Indio. He had a D number, and I show was validated as MA by 1995. He then came back with a K number. Jesus Little Chuy Avila de la Mora was actually from Mexico, but also claimed Venice and was sponsored by longtime MA member Rube Soto. He also ran drugs for Fox Tapia, who had at New Folsom, and Victoria Murillo. I show Little Chuy got a C number in the 1980s, was sent to the feds, where he did time at Lompoc as well as the ADX in 2003, was released in 2004, and ended up being found dead down in Mexico. I'm not sure if foul play was related, but a lot of times these guys just overdose. It is La Vida Loca, the crazy life. Robert Sleepy Avina was from Pico Rivera, and I show he had a B number and was MA in the mid-70s. He may have been hit by the NF at DVI around 1975. Jesus Gato Avina Lopez was from El Centro and also had ties to Yuma, Arizona. He did time in the Fed system and was at least an MA associate. He was released in 2007. Agustin Ayala may have been from San Diego. I show he was born in 1934 and had a B number. He was MA in the 1970s and stayed in that status until at least 2004. He may be deceased now. Hector Juan Ayala of the famous Ayala brothers is from Old Town National City and was involved in multiple 187s. He first had a C number and was made MA around 1980, was released, and then came back with an E number. He was said to have been involved in the murder of Jimmy Primo Palma from Sangra. Jose Bugsy Ayala was from Logan Heights 30s. I don't think he's related to the other Ayalas, but I'm not sure. But I show he was an MA member at Pelican Bay. Louis, a.k.a. Spanky Ayala, was from Barrio Norwalk. He caught a D number, and I show that he was a Mexican Mafia member with Torito de Lomas. Ronnie Ayala The brother Hector, of course, is also from Old Town National City and was also involved in multiple murders. He was also involved in the murder of Palma. In late 2022, the San Diego Police Department and the FBI arrested 7 accused gang members and seized drugs and weapons from a stash house in Encanto, California. This was the focal point of Operation Scrapbusters. This drug and gun running operation was eventually tied back to Ronnie Ayala and currently sits on San Quentin's death row. That's all I have for just the alpha names. Any more information or war stories about any of these guys? I have quite a few. And you can see a lot of them in my book, The History of the Mexican Mafia. For now, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians.